A dark website vanished, and it's my fault. http 198.74.51.76/page/3. A couple of years ago, I saw the program Tor in the news. It's one way people use to access the darknet. I decided to find a tutorial and follow suit. Ever since then, I've checked different sites on and off whenever I get bored. A week ago, I found a thread on some 4chan ripoff site, toting an IP address with something thrilling hosted there. There were barely any comments and response, but it was getting a lot of views. I decided to check it out. I was lying in bed, well past 1 in the morning, and when the screen changed, I had to squint through both the dark and my tiredness to see straight. On screen were 4 boxes I could scroll down through, and a chat area at the bottom of the page. The whole site was themed with shades of white and grey. The comment box was themed to look like a Linux terminal. Typical HackerGeek site. After a second, the 4 boxes finished loading, and they changed from solid grey to grainy video. Each box held a similar perspective from a camera poised in the upper corner of a room, looking down. The rooms were all dim, but if I maximumed out my brightness, I could make out figures lying down on the floor below. The rooms were small, barely large enough for a person to spread out in. It was too dark to make out any detail. Just 4 figures lying on the floor of separate rooms. I scrolled to the bottom and found a box with instructions. Here's what it says. Commands via chat. /about. Display details about captive. /lights. Toggle lights. /food. Dispense 1 cup of food. /water. Dispense water for 10 seconds. /flush. Flush toilet. /family. Play family member's voice. /noise. Play a loud noise. My subconscious knew what this meant before the rest of me did. I clicked in the new chat bar and typed /lights1. The number for each of the 4 cameras appeared as white text in the top left corner, so I put the first camera number as the cam_ID. The browser shot back a response. My command was in the chat log. I scrolled back to the top, to the camera I had entered. It took a second of lag, but the overhead light near the camera snapped on audibly. The entire room was blasted with stark white light and fluorescent buzzing. The figure on the ground, who I could now recognize as a guy in his mid-20s, flinched in response. He covered his eyes and groaned, pressing his face down towards the concrete floor to hide from the light. My mouth dropped open at the sight of the room. It was a concrete box. On one side, a small enclave was carved out with a shelf. Far from the camera, but still visible, was a shiny, metal toilet. The types of toilet you would see in prison documentaries. The guy was butt naked, laying in a concrete cell. A prison. I glanced back at the commands, scrolling fast. Food, water, toilet. This guy. No, all these people were in a prison, controlled by some effed up chat by anyone who wanted to stop by. I scrolled up again, and looked at the URL. 198.74.51.76/page/1. Page 1. I typed in URLs as fast as I could, checking each page as it loaded. 198.74.51.76/page/2. 198.74.51.76/page/3. 198.74.51.76/page/10. It just kept going, with no end in sight. Every page had 4 cameras. More than 40 people were being kept like this. I stopped changing URLs and glanced through the page, trying to find some indicators. Who were these people? Why were they here? Who was taking care of them? Was anyone else logged in? When was the last time these people were fed? The chat logs had no dates. I could see commands on every page, but there was no indication of when they had been typed, or by who. There were no usernames either. No count saying how many people were online and viewing. On a whim, I typed one of the commands, about 12. You are not authorized. She. As I read wildly over the pages, I decided to give them a much needed break. Who knew how long it had been since these people ate and drank? I went down the list of commands, focusing on the right camera to make sure the commands actually worked. /food 10. I scrolled back up and waited for the real life lag. A whirring sound filled my phone speakers, and I squinted to see through the darkness of the room. I hadn't turned on the lights, not wanting to startle the person. I could see movement, but it was too dark to tell. I couldn't resist. I scrolled down, typed \lights 10, and scrolled back up. The lights flashed on, and the girl there flinched. She simultaneously tried to cover herself and her eyes from the light. She was kneeling over a pile of what looked like dog food that had fallen off the shelf. I couldn't tell where it had come from, but it was scattered all over the cell. The girl was chewing and had scooped up some food to eat before the lights came on, but now she was just staring, watching the camera like she could see me. "I'm sorry," I said out loud. My breath caught in my throat, but she didn't react. My voice hadn't carried through the browser. This website didn't have permission to access my microphone anyway, not that it had asked. Feeling embarrassed, I scrolled down and typed \lights 10 again to toggle the lights off. I double checked that it worked, then started thinking. I had been tired before, but now I was wide awake. How many people were there? How long had it been since they had eaten or drank? My night's mission took form in my head, and I jumped out of bed. I switched on my lamp and booted up my laptop, setting my phone aside. I navigated to the site and found it was still accessible. I'd been secretly worried that it would disappear once I used my laptop, but it hadn't. And now I could really help these people. I navigated back to page 1. The first guy in camera 1 was still burying his head in his arms, trying to sleep despite the light. My fingers flew over the keyboard. \food 1. \water 1. Now that I was on a bigger screen, I didn't have to scroll back and forth between the camera and the chat. I could see my commands taking effect. The whirring sounded again, and I watched as dog kibble clattered out of a hole above the shelf and bounced around the room. This got the guy's attention because he scrambled up and chased every little crumb, shoving it into his mouth and chomping it loudly. He'd been starving. As soon as the food finished, a stream of water could be heard, but I couldn't see it. It took me a minute to see that it was a small stream coming from the ceiling and dropping directly into the toilet. The guy left the remaining kibble and ran for the water. He caught some on his open tongue, then cupped his hands to collect as much as he could, drinking it at the same time. The guy was parched. Now that he was standing, I noticed that I could see his ribs. His whole body was skin and bone. He was dying. The water fountain stopped after 10 seconds, just like the instructions indicated. He finished the last of the water he had cupped, but managed to spill a lot of it onto the floor and into the toilet. The guy stood there for a minute, hands dripping. He stared down into space, his back to the camera. He began to shake, and I panicked, thinking the water had been poisoned or been mixed with bleach. But the guy dropped to his knees, supporting himself on the seat of the toilet, and started sobbing loudly. I cried too, openly. I watched this kid cry, kneeling in a cell. I knew it would be a long night. I got up, snuck to the fridge, grabbed a Red Bull, and closed the door to my room. Time to get to work. I went through every single camera on that site, at least all the ones that were displayed. My process was systematic. Page by page, camera by camera. Lights on. 2 servings of food. 2 servings of water. Flush the toilet. Lights off. The camera angle wasn't good enough to see if the toilet was clean or not, so I flushed everyone for good measure. There ended up being 16 pages in total. 4 cameras per page, made for 64 people being displayed on the site. The first few pages had traces of past commands. The last few had barely any. I could tell by their body types, however, that they were new to the process. They weren't starving yet and had red eyes and fresh tears. Those on the early pages acted like veterans to the process in comparison. By the time I finished, it was approaching 4 in the morning. I had to wait for them to eat, then find out the water was running and drink it. It took time, and I had no way to communicate what I was doing. At least the sound of the food motor whirring got them up fast. They knew what that sound meant. As I worked, I'd analyzed each cell. They were all similar. The camera was angled in a way that I couldn't see one of the walls. Did it contain a door? Everyone I saw slept within the frame, so I assumed that there wasn't much more to the room outside of my camera view. The floors and walls were solid concrete. A small drain under the toilet was the only connection with the outside world I could see. My brain ran through multiple potential layouts. I couldn't ask them about the cell, and it was infuriating. By that time, I'd become exhausted again. The Red Bull had done essentially nothing. I had to work the next day, so I closed my laptop and laid back in bed, trying to make sense of the sight. My alarm got me up at 7, just enough time to shower and get to work in time for opening. I spared a few minutes to make sure the site was still online. It was. And, at least on the page one checked, no new commands had been issued. It was just me, not wanting to leave, but doing so anyway. I went to work. Every chance I had while at work, I checked the site. The cells were all still dark, but I could see some movement. I didn't want to turn on the lights, since I didn't know their sleep patterns. That was seriously what I was thinking about. I became suddenly worried about their well-being. I sped home after work and opened up my laptop to do my routine again. I spent 2 hours going through it, moving faster this time. As I went, I opened a new tab for the next page, so I could give food, move to the next camera, then come back for water when they were done eating. With only a couple more pages to go, a shout just about made me jump out of my skin. At first, I thought it was one of my roommates yelling for me. I slammed my laptop closed and looked at the door, but no one was trying to come in. I got up, shut the door, like I should have before, and opened my computer up again. The shouting continued. Hey, hey. I scrolled through tabs, trying to find which one of them was yelling. My heart pounded, worried that one of them was injured. Hey, turn on the water, if you can hear me, she yelled. I got to the right tab, and I knew it was her, because she was standing, arms wide, facing the camera. It was the girl from page 3, camera 10, the one that had been hiding herself from the camera. She stared at the camera, waiting expectantly. The camera was grainy, but I could make out her expression. I had already given her food and water, so she knew I was there. Or, I was a minute ago. For all she knew, I was gone already. I decided to comply. /water 10. The water stream started up. The girl let her arms drop to her sides and nodded. Okay, you're online. That was day 2 without food or water, before you finally remembered that I'm here, she shouted angrily. I flinched, as if I'd been the one who'd done this to her. If you don't want me to starve, I'd suggest sending more food. 2 cups isn't enough, she demanded. Her tone was harsh, and I didn't blame her. She thought she was talking to her captor. I obliged and sent 2 more commands for food. Without a second thought, I went back through every tab and sent extra food to them all. I looked away when they scrambled like animals to pop little bits into their mouths. It was dehumanizing for them, and I felt empathy enough not to stare, even though they couldn't see me. Water is yes, toilet is no, okay? The girl spoke up again. I clicked back to her tab to see her watching the camera again. Instead of eating all the food I'd given, she had shoveled up some into a pile against a wall, in case I didn't reappear for 2 days, probably. It took me a minute to process what she was saying. Water is O for communicating. I typed my answer. /water 10. The water streamed. She smiled slightly, then shot a question she'd probably been thinking about for a while. Do you know who I am? Like, my name? No. The toilet flushed, and she jumped despite herself. So you didn't choose to kidnap me specifically? I hesitated. Answering either way would make her think she was talking to her captor. She prodded with, are you there? I flushed the toilet to answer her first question. Will I ever get out of here? I couldn't answer yes or no. I hesitated. So, lacking an answer, I sent food instead. She looked over at the food spilling onto the floor, then back up at the camera. Does that mean you don't know? She asked, astute. I sent a stream of water. Yes. Are you the one that did this to me? Smart. I flushed the toilet. No. I would ask who you are, but that's not a yes or no question, she mused aloud. Do you know why I'm here? She asked. I flushed the toilet. Obviously she was there to entertain suckers on the internet, but beyond that I wasn't sure enough to answer yes. I'm going to trust you. If you really aren't the one that did this to me, I need you to get help. Find my family. My name is Sarah Redacted. I'm 27, from Fairfield, Connecticut. Get me out. She started to cry, sobs breaking up her last sentence. Will you do that? She choked out. My breath caught in my throat. I knew who she was. I could find her family, let them know she was alive, contact the police. Heart pounding, I knew it was now my responsibility. I sent a stream of water. Yes, I've redacted her last name for reasons that will become clear towards the end of this post. We responded to each other off and on for a while. She would take a little bit to find a way to phrase her questions as yes/no/I don't know ones, and I wrapped up my rounds of food and water for the other 63 prisoners. Her questions were spread out as she thought of how to phrase them. There wasn't too much to talk about now that she knew I didn't know anything about her capture or circumstances. Eventually, she ran low on things to say and told me she wanted to sleep. I turned out the lights for her. I wished I could communicate with the rest of them. The use of the commands as a yes/no communication style was genius. No one else had said anything, and I had no way of initiating that conversation with anyone. They had to reach out to me first. So far, everyone else was only concerned with eating, drinking, sheeting, and sleeping. Most were resigned to their fate. Some cried. Some yelled incoherently and punched walls. None tried to talk to me. No one except Sarah, Camera Girl 10. Once I had finished feeding everyone, I started my search for Sarah. I clicked open a search tab and typed rapidly. There were results, but none looked like her. The name was common enough that it would take some effort to sort through everything. As I hit another dead end, I sat back to take a break. I opened her tab to check on her. She hadn't spoken, but I wanted to make sure she was alright. The lights were still out, and her faint outline could be made out on the floor, sleeping. While looking over every part of the page, hoping for clues, I tried the about command on Sarah. The same response came back. You are not authorized. So who was authorized? It's not like there was a login or anything. I sifted through the source code, but couldn't find anything interesting. I recreated the network requests to the server that it issued, but nothing unknown came back. The site was clean, at least to my skill set. Time to call in the professionals. I looked up how to report websites to police, and the recommendation was to send an email, according to the FBI's tip report website. So, I wrote one. I composed it in my personal email account, and just as I was about to hit send, I hesitated. If I submitted a tip, it would be linked to my name, my personal data. What if this site did get shut down, and it went to court? They, the ambiguous they meaning anyone who wanted to harm or use me, would know exactly who told the FBI about the site. It was a morally correct thing to do, but was it what I wanted? In other words, was I painting a target onto my own back? I copied the text of the email and instead opened a disposable email address. After pasting the email, I addressed it and sent it off. The site allowed you to access that disposable email inbox as long as you kept your tab open, so I left it there, hoping for a quick response. I don't remember ever falling asleep that night, but I woke up on my bed feeling groggy. My alarm was ominously silent, despite the sunlight coming in through the blinds. Panic was instant as I jumped out of bed. My phone was sitting on my desk, completely drained. I hadn't plugged it in, which mean no alarm. I raced to get ready, seeing that the time was 10 AM. I was a full 2 hours late. My phone was too dead to call in. I plugged it in while in the car, but that wasn't enough time to get it over 20%. When I got to work, I did a lot of butt kissing and apologizing for being late. My manager was pissed. I plugged my phone into the wall of the break room and started my shift. My break was short. I hadn't packed lunch, so I had to go buy some. By the time I could sit down with my phone, there was only a few minutes left. I checked the site, and Sarah's voice came over my speakers immediately. She was talking, but not to me. Someone else. I watched the chat moving below the cameras. The chat log only went back a few messages, so all I could see were lots of calls to changing the lights and playing loud noises. While I watched, several people were having jumbled conversations. I couldn't tell how many there were because there were no usernames. What's her name again? Sarah. If you guys would stop effing with the lights, we could have played along. She was trying to talk to us. We can't talk back. Look at her jump. After that, a woman's voice came over the speakers. Sarah, you there? I scrolled up to see Sarah drop to the floor and stick her head in her folded arms. Defeated. In the chat, someone had typed family 10, triggering the new voice. A family member of Sarah's. Hey, break's over. My manager popped into the break room. Leave me alone. Sarah's scream erupted from my phone. I panicked and hit the power button, silencing the browser. My manager gave me a confused and annoyed look. Sorry, I'm coming now, I said, standing up. Leave your phone here, he commanded, walking away. I clenched my teeth, waited for him to leave, then unlocked my phone again. Sarah was screaming profanities. I quickly closed the tab and locked my phone again. It went back into the plug, and I walked back to work, hands shaking. After work, I raced home again and logged into my laptop. The first place I checked was Sarah's page. It was dark now. The last command issued had been to turn off the lights. There were no timestamps, so there was no way for me to know when that had been. I didn't want to start interacting with her when someone else was in the room. There was no count of who was watching anywhere, so I had to just wait and watch for activity in the chat. I gave it a full 10 minutes before giving in. Whoever had been there before was now gone, so far as I could tell. I turned on the lights, and Sarah groaned, annoyed. She sat up and rubbed her eyes before picking a few bits of dog food from her now larger pile and crunching on them. Can I have some water? She asked, her voice hoarse. I obliged with a stream of water. She moved to it and drank from her hands. I gave several pumps worth of water. Is it you? She asked, not looking at the camera. Her voice was low, like she was trying to speak to me without other people hearing, which was impossible in this situation. I sent a stream of water as my answer. Yes. Someone else was here a while ago, Sarah said, running her fingers through her greasy hair and sitting down. They messed with the lights and played voices. Are you able to play those? She asked, looking up at the camera. Instead of playing a voice, which could have been triggering for her, I sent a stream of water. She nodded to herself. You have the same access they do, but I'm guessing that access doesn't include opening the door, does it? I flushed the toilet behind her. She sighed, and it caught in her throat and turned into a sob. We need a signal, so I know when it's you and not someone else. Sarah looked up at the camera, expectantly. I racked my brain, trying to come up with a good pattern to follow as a signal. Eventually, I settled on this one: lights on, water, lights off, toilet flush, lights on, food drop. I played it once for her, then waited so she could see the pattern. She repeated it back for me, and I answered yes with a water stream. She sighed. Do me a favor, she almost whispered. Don't ever play the voices. Understand? She didn't know that I knew it was her family. I started to tear up when I sent my answer. Yes. I went through and fed everyone with my usual routine. I had checked my disposable email beforehand, but there had been no response yet. I got angry for a bit, wondering what was taking so long when so many people were suffering. Instead of brooding, I kept feeding and watering them all. Sarah made small talk, or as much small talk as you can, when you've been locked in a cell for God knows how long. She asked if I had found her family yet, and I told her no. She asked if I had told the police, and I said yes. She tried to come up with a good way to find out what I knew so far, which was nothing. It was disappointing to only be able to answer no to her questions. No progress had been made. It infuriated me. It depressed her. Eventually she got on the track of trying to guess my name. My name isn't a standard one, so it was practically impossible for her to guess, but she didn't know that. She gave me names, and I answered yes or no. At first, she was fast, rattling them off like counting to 100. But once she had exhausted all the normal ones, she took her time with her answers. I tried looking for more information about her online, but couldn't find anything approximating her. No Facebook, no Twitter, no Instagram, no missing persons reports, no info about her at all. I was at the point that I considered getting a list of everyone with her last name in Fairfield and calling to ask if they had a missing daughter. The city was too big for that, though. She tried to institute a type of Morse code for me to communicate with her, but she was unable to keep up with my light switching to distinguish between a dot and a dash, let alone make out words. We gave up on that idea pretty quickly. I was just about ready to sleep, and so was she, when she blurted out, "What about Marvin? Is your name Marvin?" The question made me burst into laughter, so hard I was crying. There was no way she would ever guess my name. I decided to help her out and take the name I was given. I sent a water stream to confirm my new name. Her laugh filled my computer speakers. "I can't believe I guessed such an obscure name." She giggled. My smile was cut short when I saw new text appear on screen that definitely hadn't been in the source code. It was in a bright, ominous red. "Admin is online. F." Almost immediately, a message appeared in chat. "Your actions have come under scrutiny." I stopped breathing. "While noble, your actions are not what this site is intended for." The admin typed \lights in rapid succession, killing all the lights on every camera on the site. It must have been done by a bot. It was too fast for a human. Sarah had still been giggling when her lights went out. She stopped immediately. "Marvin?" She called into the dark. I tried to turn the lights back on. \lights 10. "You are not authorized." The admin typed. "Leave and never return." I tried the lights again, but got denied every time. Suddenly, Sarah's family's voice came over the speakers in her cell. She whimpered and shifted in the dark. "Leave now, or I will hurt her." The commands box refreshed, changing to new commands that hadn't been visible before. Commands via chat, level 2. \drain, open or close the drain. \water long, dispense water for 1 hour. \tainted food, dispense 1 cup of food soaked in bleach. \hot, increase the room temp by 5 degrees. \cold, decrease the room temp by 5 degrees. \clog, clog and flush the toilet. \shock, activate an electrical outlet. \disturb, play soundtrack of screams. \deaf, play noise loud enough to deafen. The options were so horrendous, especially when mixed together, that I knew I had no choice. My whole body was shivering as I closed each tab one at a time. When they were all closed, the anger came. I went for my junk drawers sitting under my desk and yanked one open. Scrambling through the contents, I snatched one of my old phones I kept lying around. I plugged it in and turned it on. The boot up screen took forever. While it loaded, I put on my shoes and a jacket and left the apartment. It was late past midnight, but I drove to the closest McDonald's and sat in their parking lot. With their Wi-Fi, I tried to access the site again from a brand new device on a new network. The site loaded exactly as you can see it here. http 198.74.51.76/page/3. All of the cameras are disconnected and just show white noise static. The chat still works, though with the original command instructions in place. But every time I issue a command, it says, "Camera 10 is not connected. Page 3 is the only one that loads now. No other pages load." They all say the page doesn't exist. The entire site was shut down and disconnected except for this one page. I can't help but wonder if it's a message for me, like it was left up intentionally to taunt me. At home, there was still no reply from the FBI's tip email address. So, since the circumstances had changed, I sent it again, adding what had just happened, and used my personal email address this time. Perhaps having my name attached would add some credibility. This appears to have worked, because they did respond and said they were looking into it and that they have found where the site has moved to, though they won't tell me. I've been back and forth with them over the last few days. They threatened me, under penalty of a charge for obstructing justice, that I was not to reveal Sarah's identity or where she was to anyone. They claimed they were working with the family, which is why I redacted her last name in this post, for compliance. But I still had to make this. I'm just a dude whose knowledge about websites and computers is severely limited. I'm learning, but it's not fast enough. It's been several days since the site went offline, and that page is still up. They're still taunting me. Does anyone here have the know-how to do some forensic investigation on the site? Try to figure out any clues about it? The FBI might be threatening me to keep Sarah's identity to myself, but I'll be damned if that means I stop trying to find her. Please help me. The site address is all over this post for you to see and look through. Any clues could help. Just help me get Sarah free. Marvin.